Hi there, Randy Green here, part 3. And of course, if you want to get the full scope of what I'm now summarizing and putting into kind of boxes and nailing it down, so we kind of say, okay, how do we make this operational? Then you need to listen to podcast 1 and 2. But you can also just listen to this and then you can try without having the correct energy pattern behind, because podcast 1 and 2 is always about building the energy pattern. So when I do come with the solutions, it is nested in, it is connected to these patterns of change. And the first pattern of change I've created, which I spent years on creating, but now just nailing down, because we are now at that point in time where we are on the original timeline. The future has not been changed. Only for the ones that came from the future have changed trajectory. So they have achieved what they came to do, but it has not affected our reality. The rest of us, we're still in the mud. We're still on that timeline that leads to some of the futures that none of us really wants to be part of. Let us just use an analogy and say Skynet and Terminator and that type of future. So we not really want to go there. So we have choices to make. And we have what we call more long-term issues, and we have short-term issues. So that's the first part of our strategy making. Sorry, I have to drink something here. Where we as change makers are looking at, okay, can we instigate projects that will solve some of the issues in the now and at the same time also have a long-term effect? Because that's some of the things we did in the Pillar Project. And that's how you work with energy and consciousness in its correct manner. So let me take a step back. Now you understand that the goal of this is to create current projects that not only will have a feedback in our energy system and solidify our transform energies to become exemplified inside this reality, so we can keep that configuration that we have developed within ourselves in our progression work. If you want to keep that higher order type of structure, right now I keep talking about I have a neural network that works in density energies. But my body is still very, very keen on aligning with the base program. And that means I need to create some kind of holster, some kind of energy sphere where I have a project where I am downloading that energy into, because my body needs this kind of inner outer reality trinity structure. And that's part of the Pillar Project as well. 1-7 pillars, all about you. That's the progression work on the whole Academy website. Pillar 2 is the change maker. That's why we are new. That's why we learn to work with others within the context of creating what we could call an environmental reality for the highest good of the many. When you work with others, it's not about others and what others want from you and what you could do. It's more what you can do for others, actually. But it's also to do the JF Kennedy and don't ask what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, which is a good old Caesar speech. But let us go in and have that understanding and say, okay, this, when we talk about Pillar 2.8, and that's some of the issues of the next 9 years, that will be from 2025 and onward. Then we head into the activation and cleanup of the 2.8 pillar. That's why we learn the rules of engagements. That's why we learn to work with other species. That's where we learn to what it means to be a diplomat, a judge, whatever, a warrior, whatever that is. That's where we understand that we as part of a reality are also part of the other life forms, and the other life forms are part of us. It does not mean that we are all one at one mint. Does not mean that, no, because we are so dissimilar, but we exist within the same reality. And this dissimilarness, this diversity should be put into joint projects where the focus is to solve some of the current issues. And that's what I talked about in podcast 1, where those of us who remember that, we're just kind of saying, why is it so fucking difficult for you to get your shit together and do what needs to be done? Because people are not working to solve issues together. They are not working as a team. Humans on this planet are only working as teams within their little communities. And you have the Gospels as well that exemplify that too. Not that Jesus walked on the earth. This is an analogy trying to, that's these Gospels, some of them are, especially the Gospel of Mark, is to show us this is what we're up against. You're up against demons and evil forces and rigid structures and temple structures and religious teachers and what have you, political system, whatever. Everything is rigid. You never heaven, you can't really get into the kingdom of heaven if you are using the channels of what's going on within the base program. It's the same understanding, because there's been voices throughout the course of history, including in the original chakra system teachings, including whatever teaching system you have. Those who want to get out of the base program, there are certain rule sets. There's certain things you need to do. There are certain methods that you need to follow. And I've just pushed it into this generation of, okay, now we are here. This is the terminology and what's the original purpose of it, not under the factions and what they have tried to accomplish. I talk about that in the teaching systems as well as in my take on Buddhism. But what are we actually supposed to do as change makers? So today we're not spiritual people. We are not this or that. We are social engineers. We are recreating reality using the higher order sciences. We are not spiritual. We don't believe in guides and gods and whatever with G. We go into this understanding that we are the change makers. We are the ones that understand energy and consciousness within a scientific context. We're doing a lot of C here, change maker context. So we're doing a lot of C here where we are working with that understanding that we can change reality because we're using consciousness. Change maker consciousness. I'm playing on that one. That's pillar 2.8, where we understand that we are amongst others, not because we need them as partners and lovers or boyfriends or girlfriends, or because there are children and offspring, which you know where I come from. We don't have children. That's weird stuff. And don't get me down that path of how I felt when I was pregnant. It was just kind of, am I in the movie The Alien or what fuck is going on here? That was so surreal. Seriously. Anyways, not going down that one. But that whole understanding, what are we actually here to do? Those of us who choose to do it, because we still have huge groups out in the human population. And I completely understand those of you who are stuck in your ways and you love your partner and you love your family and you can't let go of that and you won't let go of that because that's the most important thing for you. And that's it has always been that. It was that in the times of the timeline event and after the timeline event, and that's why things happen as they are. It's the same that were played out when the Dracos came here to preserve the family unit, to preserve this unity feeling of being part of a group in a different manner than the original worlds we came from. That's part of the HAL CHMAR code. It's part of that ability to link heart to heart, the ability to love. Yes, that type of caring, nurturing, empathic love, not that kind of love that's desire driven and I love you so you can give me something, or I love you so we can have sex, or I love you so you can give me your money or something. Not that type of love, but that kind of altruistic, all-caring kindness that goes with compassion and true compassion, understanding of the others as they actually are, and still accepting whoever and whatever they are, and have space for them. Because if you kind of go in with, this is why also when we talk about the name Jesus or Yeshua and why that is kind of a made-up name, because the root of that one is the root of that name, because it's the original language that only have consonants, or what you call it. There's no vowels there. It's only the big letters. It's the J, it's the H, and it is the the S, the shin that is at the end of it. And it goes with, technically, if you take the root of these letters that the name is written off, then it means being spacious, having the ability to contain peace. So, or love, if you like it. So that's kind of when we go into this whole, what was the original idea of the HAL CHMAR code? That was actually to create peace, to create this understanding of others, to be able to see what others were and then accept where they were, and then figure out, how can I amplify that? How can I help that? How can I support that so you can grow, so we all can do the elevation, so we all can get to the next level of what we're supposed to be as civilizations within this system. And that is what you could call the Christ consciousness. The ability to assist that. It has nothing to do with the Gospels. It has nothing to do with Christianity. And it's not the Syrian B version of it, the crystallines and the Kalontic sciences and the Christs and all of the ones that goes in and talks about source and father, and just because God is in me, then I can do this or that or whatever. Or because I'm connected to Christ as part of his body, then I can do this and that or whatever. Or because I have Christ consciousness, then I'm connected to Jesus Christ and he is in me and I speak his voice and his teachings or whatever's going on out there. not what I'm talking about. This is when we talk about Christ consciousness, is the same as if you're talking about a highly educated, enlightened, empathic, completely understandable human that is exercising his or her complete awareness spectrum within different concepts of actively and exponentially growing change in the world that they are part of. That's what the Gospels are also saying. Yeah, nobody wanted the world to change, so they crucified him on the matter cross. And yet we put that in Luke, where we have the first saying, or the first story of then he came back, he did the transfiguration, and that's kind of what we call an interpolation. It's put in there. I think I talked about it earlier. I call it extrapolation. That's when you pull something out, but interpolation, it's put in later. It's not part of the original story. Kind of all scholars agree on that. So there was no evidence of him coming back. Yes, we had Paul who had a vision of him, and you can have a vision of Jesus Christ. There are a lot of people today talking about having a vision of Jesus Christ, and they become the new leaders of different religious movements. As for instance, when we call, what is it, the latest one, Bahal, what do you call it? It's not Baal, but Baha'i, he also had a vision of Jesus Christ. There's many people who have visions of Jesus Christ. I have had visions of Jesus Christ, but you don't hear me going out and becoming a leader and saying, oh yeah, I had a vision of Jesus Christ. I was struck by lightning, and then the dove ascended upon my head and pooped me in the hair. No, you're not hearing me saying that. I'm sorry, I'm making a little bit of joke about it, and I know it's offending some people, but it's important that we understand that the manipulation that's going on. Some of you are also having visions of me. As I've heard that many times. Oh, you came to me in a dream. You told me I should do this and that and whatever. And say, what the fuck would I come to you in a dream? I can call you if I need to tell you something. If I need you to understand something, I will pick up the phone and call you or write you an email. I would never come to you in a dream. Not even my quote unquote higher self, because if I have a higher self that are roaming around and visiting people in their dreams, I'm not really being upfront, am I? That's kind of a little bit obscure, that I come to you in the state where you're most weak, where you can't process it, where you can't defend yourself, and I'll come to you in a dream or in a vision. Absolutely not. If you are having any forms of that, just whatever that is, evaporate it. If you feel a need to stab it to death or do whatever, don't take the bait, because that's holographic overlay, and that's different entities that are trying to use the imagery you already have in your field to get access to you. If you kind of have the idea, oh yeah, I can trust what Randy's saying, they will use that image to get access to you. So don't take the bait. Whatever comes to you in dream is not of your highest interest. Because if anybody wants to contact you, they will come in daytime. Because you don't have people that actually cares about you. They will come to you face to face, right? People that doesn't care about you, they will do all sorts of weird stuff to get contact with you, stalk you in all sorts of hilarious ways. And I'm here not saying hilarious, but horrendous ways. That was the right word. Because it's not funny, right? But in horrendous ways, stalking you on the internet or whatever. People that doesn't want the best for you will not come to you in a direct manner. It takes guts and it takes kindness to come to you face to face and tell you something, even though it's difficult. So just put that one in context as well. So when we're talking as change makers and in the upcoming environment that we're going to deal with, whatever that is, there are these skill sets. There are these abilities to know what's BS and what is actual something we need to engage ourselves with. And whatever comes when you sleep and when you're semi-conscious and when you can't defend yourself, don't take it. Don't take the bait. Because if any of these races that actually are benevolent, if there were any of them left, there are not many of them left, they will come to you face to face, because they will then actually be part of this reality. And we say, well, they're coming to me that way because they need me to go up in energy. Yes, definitely. In meditation, I can do that as well. And I did that in the beginning, where I meditated, calmed my body down, went in, then I elevated myself up. And yes, there I connected. And I would say 2% were benevolent, the rest were not. again, you say, well, Rand, it's just because you work with the bad guys. That's all you're seeing. When I am around, I'm just seeing good stuff and all these kind of things. You say, good. If that's the truth, good. Thumbs up. Then polarity works. Then someone is actually out there experiencing good stuff. But I'm also saying to you that, yes, we should, as we're doing with other people in our reality field, we won't talk about others. Of course, we should expect people to want to do our best, as in kind of what they do to others, what they want you to do unto themselves, so to speak. So we have that principle 1 and 2, where you treat other people the way that you would like to be treated yourself, and you act with kindness and compassion and understanding. Of course, goes without saying, it should be so inbuilt. Those of you who are part of this, the D14 collective, you have the color car code. It's so supernatural for you. It's not above natural, but it's supernatural. It's very natural for you to choose that path as the first step. But that's also where I'm going in to say, yeah, you need to go a little bit beyond that insectoid, avian, infantile, naive, and go a little bit higher and understand that that is actually what took out the civilizations in this system, because they were so naive. Many of you that are enslaved, you are from systems where you just lived under the D14 collective, but you got a little bit too close to the areas, and the scavengers chew their way through, and they got to your planet, and they took you over, and they brought you here where you would fuel this system. So you are made to be in that infantile, naive, love and light, constant type of energy, because you're upholding certain networks so everything won't collapse. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But if you could kind of wake up to that understanding, that's actually what you're being used for, and then figure out, okay, how do I get out of that enslavement? How do I actually learn to work with these potentials in the right manner so it would benefit the system? Then you would become a change maker. So this is the understanding. So you're not hearing me say, oh, you have to abandon everything. Well, if it were a perfect world and we could completely focus on changing things and go into little communities and all this kind of things. Oh yeah, let's do that, as they did it with the astronauts. I'm just saying, yeah, from a strategic point of view and the amount of hostility, and that people have not yet learned to defend themselves energetically, and they haven't got the psychic defense up, and they're still too naive and don't understand what we're up against, probably not the right solution. You see, that's again where my mind shifts from the one level as in, oh yeah, that would be so nice. And the first thing I do is do the SWOT analysis. I go in and say, what's the strengths, what's the weakness, what's the opportunities, what the threats? And I always focus on the threats. And you say, Randy, could you please just go over the opportunities? And I know the opportunities. We've done it so many times before, and it has not worked yet. And then you say, well, Randy, that's the problem with your age. You're just saying we've done that before, so therefore it won't work anymore. And all of you youngsters out there saying, you don't have that many, many years of experience. You don't recall all the things that's been going on in our reality. And that's where I say, how can you, Randy, be a change maker that whenever I come with some solution or some idea, you shoot it down. You shoot it down right away and say, it won't work, it's not good. And all of that, and then list up all of the negative things. And that's also one of the reasons why I stopped doing sessions with most of you. I put it up a little bit. It's on the HAL Academy again, but there are only a few sessions. And you should only book one wisely, because what you will get from me is more or less what I've said in my classes, as well as what I'm saying here, is that you're not ready. You need to mature more. You need to grow more. You need to clean more. You need to educate yourself more. You need to expand more. You need to rise more up to your true consciousness potentials. You have barely scratched the surface of it. And I know that's kind of disheartening and discouraging, and you're kind of, why even do it? If you kind of call me thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to support you and all these kind of things because I talk about the amplification. But you see, that's who I am. That's kind of when you go in and you become a soldier, or you become in this hostile environment, or you come in these chaotic environments, or these situations in these worlds that our world actually is part of. You learn to remain who you are. That's the enormous important part of doing the self expansion work and the enlightenment work, where you understand who and what you are. Because once you get into the game of energy, if your cone of light is not strong, if your essence is not strong, you know who and what you are, then you will, as you have experienced inside this reality already, you will be like a leaf in the wind. You'll be pushed here and there, whatever comes your way. And the more we get into the original energies of our system, you will be more and more affected by the surrounding energies. You'll be more and more affected by the energies that are in other people. And unless you know exactly who and what you are without being rigidly conservative and not able to change, because that's not where we are heading and that's not the point of my approach. But when I say amplify, I amplify from the point of view of knowing that's what you are and this is what we are up against. So this is what you need to change to become that, so you have the strength to withstand what is coming our way. And that's the change makers. That's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to show you skill sets and give you tools so that all of the tools you have right now, love and light and all that good kindness and compassion, good, keep it, don't lose it. Don't ever lose it, because then you'll become a dark one. But know how to use it in a manner that will also empower you, so you don't give your power away in all sorts of lofty, softy ways of loving, caring, compassion, taking care of whoever and whatever that might not even want you to take care of them. And secondly, perhaps are showing up something, creating an overlay, so you think, oh, I need to give a love and light there, and if I do so, then they will change. That was never the purpose of the HAL CHMAR Code. We don't love to change. We don't engage to change. We don't go in and change other living beings. That's not our job. We go in and support. We go in and contain, as I talked about with the name Joshua. Or Yeshua, Joshua, same root. You go in and contain what they are. You see what they are. You understand what they are, and you accept what they are. You don't don't go into war with them. We did that in the previous universal cycle. That's the HAL CHMAR Code. It was engineered so we wouldn't go to war. So we would learn to understand the differences and then use different dynamics, such as segregation. If you want to do that, you do that, but you don't do it here. As in that kind of manner. And that sounds harsh, but when you work in energetic realities, you blend. If you connect to that type of energy, that's low participation. If you look at that energy, you give it energy. If you look at that pattern, you give it energy. You become part of that pattern. You are assimilated into that pattern. And if it's a pattern you don't want to be a part of, and let me use an analogy that is completely logical for you. You are living in a street, and down the street you have a mansion where a lot of Hell's Angels are living. These kind of, 666 oriented Hell's Angels, rocker, as we call it in Danish, types that are there on their big bikes, and they are bull-headed and big-bearded and full of tattoos and got all sorts of weapons. And they are living in a very weird tribal way that most of us doesn't really stand. It makes completely sense for them. They are a little bit like the Dracos in many ways. Warrior tribe kind of thing, rough environment, but it suits their mindset. It suits who and what they are. And as long as they're there in their mansion and on their own turf, they can do whatever they want to do. But if they want to expand into the rest of the street and they are beginning to target family homes and what have you, then you need to do something about it, right? You kind of need to defend yourself. You kind of need to find a way to work with the community, say, we got a problem. First, you just call the police and whatever. And what can the police do, right? They are kind of these Hell's Angels. They are kind of completely established root network of different tribal communities that have spores in all sorts of ways. I'm not saying the police are corrupt or anything. It's just a matter of what you can actually do something about. It's not enough just to knock on one door in one mansion, because they have all, that group has got their own reality. They have created a sub-reality where they have got all sorts of things that they are working in the way that they are doing. So even though the police might do a good job, it's not taking away the problem. It's just shutting it down for a while. Then it will surface, because there clearly is a reason why that group wants to expand. Just to use it as an example, I'm not saying they are, but that's an example that you can relate to. And that's where we are now. We are in that understanding. Yes, you can try to love and light as much a predator as you like, but that does not take away the mindset of the predator. The predator will not change because it has become what it is, and it's not interested in changing. You can only change what wants to be changed. And that's the amplification. That's, you understand what you're dealing with. Some things you know right there, that I can't change. It must run its course. And then there are other groups of people who say there is a possibility for change there. I might be able to go in and amplify that a little bit, but it will probably not lead to much. And I'm here going to do a gospel analogy again, because in one of the gospels, one of the sayings, it said that it is as with the bachelor in heaven, that is the kingdom of heaven. It's like a seed. You seed it in, there are different types of soil. There are the rocky soil, the hard soil. If you put the seed there, the wind and the weather will wither it away, and it will vanish and will not ever make roots. Then you have the other type of soil that's a little bit soft. There's a little bit of possibility for rooting there. But then the wind and the weather and the sun comes and it will wither away because the roots are not strong enough. Then you have the really soft soil with the right conditions. And then you seed the knowledge of the kingdom of the heavens. And then it will root, it will grow strong roots. And when the wind and when the weather comes in, then the plant will continue to grow because the roots are strong and it knows that this I can beat, this I can go up against. It's the same thing we're dealing with here. So that's also with what is coming now, where we have the ones that are going to do the transition. You're going to say, well, Randy, are you sure you're not talking about some kind of revelation of the end of days and the second coming, and this is where the kingdom will be on our earth? And I'll say, no, absolutely not. But you remember, I studied theology, and it, for me, whether I studied Buddhism or I studied Hinduism or I studied Christianity or Judaism or the Kabbalah or whatever I've been working with, for me, the root is the same. It's the same purpose. And I'm just saying, well, it all goes down to what was the original version of what we're doing and what are we capable of doing now. And it's nothing about returning to the kingdom of heaven as in going back and become part of God. No, this is actually expanding into the other realms of reality that is around our reality, around the enclosure. This is how you get out of here. That's not, you don't need to become Christian and go to the churches and whatever. If there were such a guy called Jesus that did really walk the ground as he is portrayed in Gospels, there was a historical character, but I don't think he was, whatever's being portrayed in the Gospels that were written 150 to 100 years after his death. Put that into context, right? Write about something that happened 50 years ago for you and see how well you're remembering that, right? Some of them, even though they claim that they walked amongst them or they have these stories from others that walked amongst them, it's still not directly, anyways, that's my perception. I know others will disagree and all these kind of things. Let's not go into a scholastic discussion among scholars of which is the right approach to see these kind of things. But if there were a character as it is portrayed in some of the older versions, the Gospel of Mark, then Jesus was clearly a Jew. He was oriented towards the Jews. And the only reason why the rest of our world here is operating with that kind of mindset is because Paul was a Jew that lived amongst the Greeks, and he tried to transfer and create a version of Christianity that was suitable for the Greeks. So that's why you have got that Christianity we have got today. So these are two different types of Christianity, if you ask me. So we are not doing Christianity the Jesus way. We are doing Christianity the the Paul way, which were later here in Europe reformed via Luther, and in Americas via different groups that kind of changed it into their version of it, whatever that means, because they had a vision, as with the what is it called? They're called the Mormons, but they like to be called the Christ of end last days or something. Something like, sorry, it's not out of disrespect. It's just some of the things I have difficulty in remembering. You say, well, then you shouldn't mention it. But it is important to mention it because let's just do the Mormons. I think his name was John Smith, if I don't recall it wrongly. He had two angels coming to him and they were called something very interesting. And that story always, for me, resembles very much when people are having encounters with different Nordic-looking Liborians. So it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of very similar, right? Anyway, so just putting things in context, it's been going out throughout history, and most of the time people has interpreted in religious ways. But it's not the same as the Gospels were intended to revive Christ. Perhaps it was intended to portray a story of human evolution that was supposed to come, that's supposed to have happened. And we did have a shift in the centuries after whatever was going on around year 0. But was it because of the Romans that tore down the temples in year 70 in Jerusalem, and thereby forcing the rabbis to create the synagogues because the temple had been taken over, and the change of the entire environment? Was it that changed it? If the Romans hadn't done that, would we even have these stories that lingered on, that Christ initiated or Jesus initiated the changes that led to the fall of the temple, and all of these kind of ideas? We can always connect the dots in different ways. And if you go into the early Christianity, to go down that path, because we can use that in our understanding today as well. That's where history becomes, that can be used in our favor, because we can look back and say, it has happened before. What did they do? What did they do wrong? And what they did wrong was that they were expecting the second coming within their lifetime. Paul preached that. And when it didn't happen, they went into cognitive dissonance, and then they came up with all sorts of other stories of why they had to wait. And then you have the book of Revelation that came in. Well, we'll have to wait 2,000 years before he comes back, because first we have 1,000 years of this, and then we have 1,000 years of that, and then it will come in first. The Babylonian Empire must play out their story and whatever, or take over the Roman Empire, whatever. And it was written around 200 years after the death of Christ. So you kind of begin to see, then it comes into a different context. I talk about that as well in the C Forum podcast and other places, because this is enormously important for us to understand how we like to adapt our storyline to the circumstances. We think one thing to begin with because we hope and pray that this is how it's going to go. And we put all of our endeavors in projecting that into the future. This is, as we heard it with spirituality, as we heard it in the 2000s, as we heard it with the Mayan calendar, as we heard it with this and that, whatever, that this was going to be the awakening, that this was going to be where we would ascend, and this is where heaven would come to earth, and these are the second coming, or whatever is going on. But the matter of the fact, it has not happened yet, right? We are way across that deadline of 2,000 years now, right? So you say, well, if that was written 300 years after, yeah, but then it had nothing to do with Christianity, had it? Okay. So let's just put things a little bit on the table so you kind of get all of these voices out there. They're saying this and that, whatever. And there's absolutely no doubt that within the different remains of the Baal version of Christianity, there is a lot of second coming rumors. There's a lot of who's the new Messiah. You have heard them play out within specific far-right communities in America. They're very strongly using that one. And that is part of a specific takeover strategy from some of the different alien factions that are here. You heard that as part of the Colontics as well. So there's nothing new about that if you have studied the different approaches, the different voices, and then are saying, okay, perhaps it's not happening the way they said it would, but what's the mega trend? What is the idea? Because all ideas, and you know that as a social entrepreneur, or if you do a business, or if you are trying to get VC, or what you call it, have one of these investor angels that are coming your way and trying to assist you, and you create that business plan, you create, this is the product I want to make. And you're convinced that that is what you want to do. And then you put it in motion, and then you see, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And you have to change it. You always have to change it. That's where it's important to go in with what we call design thinking, or you do agile management, where you constantly tweak and twist whatever you're doing, because that's reality. Nothing ever is what we think it is. It always changes. We have an idea of what we want to put in, but it's never ending there. And that's one of the things I discovered as well when I did the progression work. I had one idea of what I want to create. There's certain amounts of that idea I haven't manifested yet. I know what I want to go with it, but the time is not right. And I have to do that and that and that and that before that can manifest. Not as in I have to do this before I can do that. No, I have to manifest certain patterns of change before it's possible for me to really begin to work with the alien agenda as I see it, and what we can achieve here and what we should achieve, and complete the pillar project for the original solar system lineages as we're supposed to do now, so we can move on, so we can do the transition. So that's important to understand, that we think that things are going in one direction, but it rarely does, because life happens. Things happen. Shit happen. You know that from Forrest Gump, right? You never know what comes in. So you have to know who you are. The only thing that you have under control is yourself. You are not in control of others. You're not in control of reality, but you're in control of, to a certain degree, of what you are. And whenever something is coming in and juggernaut you and push you off your track, you know where you are, so you can align yourself with that timeline you have chosen, so you can recreate that energy structure, that configuration that is important for you to create. And for me, it is to complete the pillar project, clean up the mess, shut everything down, and move on. And if nothing can move on, then dissolve it and cease to exist entirely, knowing that I have cleaned all timelines, so I will have no connection point to this system, because this system is going to become something entirely else, and that else I don't want to be part of. So I'm ensuring there's nothing left of me here. So that's what I'm doing. Whatever I'm doing, as in kind of giving you teachings or doing these podcasts or giving the news or giving headlines and trying to amplify where you are in the different levels of who and what you are. I have no expectations of it for you anymore. I used to be very, strained in a way, because I really had expectations that you could do it. And then I just discovered, after all of these talks with all of you, perhaps the requirements, it was not enough to give the awareness. It was not enough to do the conversations. It was not enough to do the healing. People resume to their pattern because they don't understand what we're actually up against. They don't understand the constant iteration that must be done, similar with the product, similar with the project. Your body is your project. Your energy system is your first project. And if you can't master the constant changes there as a change maker, it's going to be very difficult for you to master the changes of reality and master the changes in others. So this is the first step. Know thyself. As the oracle in Delphi said, you need to be in control of your own house. You need to be master of your own house. And that's what's taught in the Gospel of Mark as well. You need to be master of your own house, because if you're not, then the demons will take you over. That's what's taught in the Gospel of Mark. So that's the first step of all teachings. You need to know where you are, so you stand in the light, so you become that soil from where the seed, the knowledge of the kingdom of heavens, can be seeded and root. And no matter what sun or weather or whatever comes your way, that root will continue to grow, because the soil, the foundation, is in order. Okay. And I'll just going to give you a dream I had when I was 16, 17, or in my 20s. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. I was probably in my 20s. I had this dream that I was in my house, and it was out close to the ocean, or actually it was on a cliff very close to the ocean. And it was a beautiful house, and it was a little bit of rough weather, gray tone weather, windy, like on the shore of Scotland or something, or on the cliffs of Scotland. And I was just there with my house, and then it began to fall apart. And I just said, why is it falling apart? It's on a rocky ground. And then I saw, no, it's not rocks, it's sand. I built my house on sand. And then it eroded, and and my house fell into the ocean. So I got that understanding that if you really want to build that house inside this reality, because of the rough wind and the outpost of it, so the outskirts into the abyss, you have to have a solid foundation. The house you're building must be on solid ground and not sand, because that will erode due to the weathering, the winds and the weathers and whatever. So that's also the understanding. Reality is actually teaching us that now directly. It has manifested. It's no longer a psychological challenge. It has now also become an actual challenge. The world is now manifesting the collective mindset of humans, of all of our fears and what we haven't achieved. It is now manifesting for us, so we can deal with it in reality. And that's part of that's part of the change maker mindset, that we understand that everything begins as energy. But if nothing is done with it in its energy version, then it will come into manifestation. And we can use that in a manner of becoming change makers, knowing that if we work with the patterns of change, as in we work with the rigid patterns, and we create patterns of change instead, where we're constantly transforming who and what we are, where we're constantly transforming reality and our energy system, we can also change the world. And that's why I started with this whole kind of, we're dealing with policymakers and people who are not interested in change. And that's why change does not happen. So what drives change is the interest for change and the fearlessness, the acceptance of change. But it's also the resilience to deal with the chaos that comes from change. You see, you ask, why doesn't people want change? Because change normally leads to a period of chaos, and people don't want chaos. They want things to be nice and neat and in their little comfort zone and what they know of and what they have got control of. So being in control of your energy system also means to be able to deal with fluctuations, to be able to deal with today I'm this, tomorrow will be something else, and deal with that. That's the observer, that's the mindfulness, and that's why I did my take on Buddhism, where I talk about that. So you are on the middle path always. No matter what happens around you, I talk about that as being a chaos pilot as well. You are able to navigate in whatever's going on because you can transform energy. You can remove the parasite. You can transform the imprint. You can get rid of what's been inserted to you while you were sleeping, and onward and so forth. That you're in control of. You're not in control of what's happening to you as when you're out driving your car. You're in control of your car. You're not in control of the other drivers. You can go on the pathway. You're in control of you on your pathway. You're not in control of the driver that is falling asleep or is losing consciousness and are bumping into you. There are things you're in control of. There are things you're not in control of. And that's one of the most important lessons of maturing, is to understand what you can control and what you can't control. And control does not mean to keep it rigidly under control, as in putting your foot on an ant. No, it means to transform whatever's coming your way into its highest potentials, into its highest type of energy. And if you can't transform it, you learn to go in another direction. You learn to shift your focus. That is turning the other cheek. If you can't change it, if you can't amplify it, if there is no Kali Ka code present in the heart field, if there is no original solar system, human genetics there, if there is no original solar angel, that's why when we talk about Christ consciousness, it gets so narrowed down to Christianity, but it's actually the original solar consciousness. If that's not present, then you can't change a damn thing. Unless, of course, you come from Orion yourself. Then you can work with the Orions. If you come from the Sirius B or Sirius A, you can work with the Sirian A's, or you can work with the Sirian B's. Or if you come from Vega, you can work with the vegans, not the plant-fruitarians, but the ones from Vega. You can work with the felines if you like. If you're that, we work with our lineage. And that's some of the things that will come from 2025. That's what we're getting ready for now. That understanding that we're going into the next very, very difficult path of the journey on our planet. And that's what I'll talk about in the next podcast.